Okay, based on how much support we get for these videos, I have to continue to dive deeper and deeper into these rankings. All you got to do is go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and also, you know we live stream every single night, Real Money Fantasy Football Drafts. If you want to be able to come out to those live streams, make sure you're hitting the bell next to the subscribe button if you want YouTube to send you a notification when we do indeed go live. And because of all the crazy support y'all have shown us lately, I'm going to continue to take that time out of my day and answer the first 200 comments on every single video. So if you have a question, make sure you leave it in the comment section. But let's dive right into this. Let's go into tier 1. We've already talked about the top 24 guys at length. I'm going to be so brief with these guys at the top. Tier 1, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey. Hell, what do I need to say that I haven't said already? I know a lot of casual fantasy football drafters say that they can't take Christian McCaffrey in the top tier because obviously the injury history. I would say that, hell, it's worth at least mentioning and using it as a tiebreaker in favor of Jonathan Taylor. But on the whole, the fantasy football community, time and time again, overrates their ability to predict injuries in a small sample or random game, where I think that taking Christian McCaffrey at 2, based on the upside that he had in 2019 and what we saw in 2020 as well, it's a no-brainer. Let's move down to that second tier, and this second tier is going to be based on those leagues, and all these rankings are based on the leagues where you start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex spots. The video we made yesterday covered how you need to be adjusting based on if you're playing in a deeper league or if you're playing in a shallower league. So when you take away that second flex spot and you can only start up to 3 wide receivers, then you need to be pushing wide receivers down, pushing tight ends up. But for this league, if we can start up to 4 and it's a full PPR format, we are going to have our top 3 wide receivers here with Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Jamar Chase. I mean, all these wide receivers, I think, have it in the range of outcomes to be the wide receiver 1 overall. And at the same time, what you are getting when you're making this investment into a position that across the board usually has lower injury rates than what you have with running back, and at the same time is significantly more predictive, I think that we're just going to get an extremely high floor to go along with that elite level ceiling. I mean, hell, can you go back 12 months from now and say, okay, the reason I lost this league was I drafted Cooper Kupp. The reason I lost this league is I drafted Justin Jefferson, Jamar. No, that's not going to be the case. I mean, this is just going to be a neutral pick. Like I said, if you're playing in a league where you only have 1 flex spot, do not feel the need to take a wide receiver here. You will be able to push up running backs, specifically with those running backs that we have in tier 3. You have Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, and Dalvin Cook. Now, guys, I understand you may see Derrick Henry this low, you may see Dalvin Cook this low, and your initial reaction's probably to go to the comment section and say, Mason, you're ugly, you have no idea what you're talking about, you clearly have never won a fantasy football league. Those things may all be true, but at the end of the day here, these are going to be my personal rankings for this tier 2 of running backs. I think every single one of these guys has red flags as well as cases for the running back 1 overall season. I mean, if we're just going to be brief, red flags for all these running backs in this tier. Running backs that are 27 years old or older, we obviously know that we have to be worried about that age cliff. Guys that fit that mold, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook. On top of this, Austin Eckler should have some serious touchdown regression coming his way. Derrick Henry is freaking 28 coming off an injury with an insane amount of tread on his tires. Not only that, but at the same time, you're looking at the overall drop off in offensive efficiency based on the downgraded offensive line, as well as the departure of AJ Brown. Dalvin Cook, you have the coaching staff change. We have the history of injuries, which is just enough to use that as a tiebreak with the other running backs in this tiers. But primarily, I'm worried about this team not being as run heavy as we've seen over the past 3 seasons. And then in the case of a Joe Mixon, maybe you're worried that he's not going to have the same level of involvement on third downs that you'll have with an Austin Eckler. In the case of a Najee Harris, maybe you're worried that, hell, the offensive line, the overall offense in general is going to struggle, and the lack of true top-end athleticism that the other running backs demonstrate in this tier is going to prohibit him from having those big play, long touchdowns. So I think every single one of these running backs has serious red flags, and every single one of these running backs has it in the range of outcomes to be the running back 1 overall. That's why this is a pretty large tier. I think this is where it does come to your personal preference. But now let's drop down another tier here. Let's go to Travis Kelce at 11. With Kelce, a perfect example. If you're playing in a shallower format, if you're playing in a 10-team league, if you're playing in a league that only has 1 flex spot, I'm actually willing to move Travis Kelce to the tier above this. Whereas if you're playing in that league, maybe you have 12 teams. You also have 3 flex spots there where we are maybe a little more prioritized to grab a wide receiver. There, I'd be willing to move Travis Kelce to the bottom end of this tier. So please understand your league format and how we should be optimizing with the positions that we draft early on. But we will have Kelce at 11. We'll have Stephon Diggs at 12. I mean, with Diggs, I honestly think that you could make an argument for him to be sliding into that tier 1 group of wide receivers. A big reason I'm going to put him here at 12 is I think that in a lot of casual drafts, you're going to be able to get Stephon Diggs in the second round. So if you're following off these rankings, you should be able to draft Diggs in the second a lot. Aaron Jones at 13. With Aaron Jones, yes, AJ Dillon should have a significant role when it comes to just his raw carries per game. What you need to be betting on if you're drafting Aaron Jones is betting on Aaron Jones maintaining his role in the red zone. Obviously, he's going to be guaranteed the high value touches in the receiving game, but we need to have those red zone touches as well. Now we're going to have CeeDee Lamb at 14. Now here with CeeDee Lamb, obviously there's nobody else in Dallas to go to. He's never finished higher than the wide receiver 16 on a points per game basis, but incredibly young. He is in line for that breakout. He was an elite level prospect, and you have no Amari Cooper, no Cedric Wilson, an injured Michael Gallup, an injured James Washington, and the number 1 offense in the NFL in pace of play, as well as passing rate over expectation. The team coming off the most points scored in the entire NFL. So it's very aggressive to be ranking CeeDee Lamb this high, but I'm going to be completely fine doing it. Now, moving down to our next player, we are going to have DeAndre Swift at 15. With DeAndre Swift, incredibly high floor. What I am worried about is I'm worried about the Detroit Lions offense not giving as many red zone opportunities to what you're going to have with the Green Bay Packers, specifically with Aaron Jones. So with DeAndre Swift, maybe he has that higher floor given the fact you're not worried about Jamal Williams taking those carries inside the 10-yard line, but I'm just worried that you're not going to have as many carries in the overall offense inside the 10-yard line that you would have with Green Bay. That's why I'm giving the tiebreak over to Aaron Jones over DeAndre Swift this season. Now, our next player, we are going to have Saquon Barkley. Here with Mr. Saquon Barkley, I think that he is a running back that's an elite talent. However, he's going to be stuck in a very bad offense. And going back to what we were talking about with Christian McCaffrey, I think 9 times out of 10, the fantasy football community is too confident with their ability to go through and actually predict injuries, where I think that we can go through. We can say, hell, Saquon Barkley is an elite level receiving running back, an elite level athlete. He has the size to be a 3-down guy. Let's rank him here. And then our last player this year, we are going to move up Alvin Kamara. And with Alvin Kamara, it looks less and less likely that he is serving a suspension this season, but it's still in the range of outcomes. If there was truly a 0%, and I repeat, a 0% chance that Alvin Kamara was suspended, I think that you could go through, you can move him up as high as 10 in that tier 2 of running backs. But with that in the back of my mind, even if it is a smaller probability than people once thought it was, I still am going to have him down here at the end of this tier. Now let's go down to our next tier, and this is going to be a group of really just 2 players. It's going to be the combination of Davante Adams and Nick Chubb. And here with Davante Adams, I loved him last year. We talked about this time and time again. This is a wide receiver that we are looking at saying, hell, we know that he's going to be seeing a 30% team target share with freaking Aaron Rodgers, some of the most efficient quarterback play in the NFL. Let's go through. Let's slam Davante Adams in the first round every chance that we get. Now I think we have to be a little bit more hesitant. You get the quarterback downgrade. Even if you like Derek Carr, you can't make the argument that Derek Carr is as good as Aaron Rodgers once was. And hell, I know a lot of people like Hunter Renfrow. I know a lot of people, including myself, like Darren Waller. So if we're also going to be looking at the level of competition for targets, we can be honest with each other and we could say, okay, he's probably going to have more target competition in Las Vegas than he did in Green Bay. So let's go through. Let's rank Davante Adams here. And then Nick Chubb as the other guy in this tier. With Nick Chubb, we've had a lot of questions of how the Deshaun Watson suspension is going to affect him. I think that through the first 11 weeks, we may see the Cleveland Browns offense just really try to slow the pace of play down and really not have that many plays to go in this entire offense, which would cap the ceiling of everyone involved. But as it stands, Nick Chubb is in the same exact situation that he was in last year. He's going to have bad quarterback play, and he's going to split the backfield with Kareem Hunt. And this is about where we had him ranked last year, is that committee running back in a bad offense behind an elite offensive line. But why I'm even more excited to draft Nick Chubb this season is, hell, on Underdog Fantasy, Nick Chubb has an ADP in the 3rd round. You don't even have to take him in the middle of the 2nd as we have him ranked. And at the same time, for that final 6-week stretch, when Watson comes back in, and even if this team doesn't run the ball as much as they did at the beginning portion of the season, the additional trips to the red zone and the increased pace of play, I do think gives Nick Chubb access to his ceiling in Cleveland based on how many points this offense is going to be putting up that we've never seen before. And of course, guys, if you wanted to draft Nick Chubb, I'd honestly probably recommend you doing it on Underdog because he has an ADP in the 3rd round there. And of course, we're drafting every single night on Underdog Fantasy. In my opinion, the most fun place to draft. Also, since it's best ball, it's no time commitment at all during the season for you. That's how I'm able to draft 500, 600 teams and still focus in on the redraft teams that I really care about during the year. And if you want to have some fun getting a draft with us on the live stream, draft with your friends, draft in the public lobby, you can go sign up for Underdog right now. And if you use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar to 100. So it's essentially free for you to try out. And literally with a $10 deposit, you're getting our 2022 rankings and our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. If you have not taken advantage of that by now, I legitimately don't know what's wrong with you. But let's go down to our next tier here, and let's look at Mark Andrews as the 20th player off the board now. Very similar to what we were talking about with Travis Kelce. Understanding your league format is going to matter so much here. If you're playing in that shallow 10-team league where you only have one flex spot, hell, go grab that elite level tight end, do it at all costs. I would be drafting Mark Andrews in that format over a Davante Adams and over a Nick Chubb. However, if you're playing in that 12-team, 14-team league where you can start, say, up to 4 or 5 wide receivers, all of a sudden Andrews isn't going to give you the same expected value at the tight end position as he would in another format. So maybe you would want to push him to the end of this tier. But it truly does come down to understanding your league makes, and how to optimize with your roster construction. But now our 21st player, Leonard Fournette. With Fournette, yes, he was the running back 6 in fantasy last year. Yes, with Leonard Fournette, there are very smart people coming out saying that he needs to be ranked significantly before this. I understand the thought process. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be a very fast-paced offense, a ton of plays to go around. And on top of this, this should be a running back drawing 5-6 targets a game and in a PPR format that is highly valuable. Now, I am concerned they bring in Rachaad White, in my opinion, the best passing down running back in this year's draft class. I think this could negatively impact the overall target share Leonard Fournette expects to see in this offense. I'm also concerned that Tampa's not going to be as productive this season as we've seen in years past whenever we're looking at the departure of both Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski. So I have my concerns with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. I have some concerns with the target share expectations for Leonard Fournette, which is why I honestly haven't drafted Leonard Fournette as much this year as last, especially when we're able to get Nick Chubb at a cheaper cost than the majority of drafts. Now, going over to our 22nd player, we are going to have Javonte Williams, with Javonte currently sitting in a committee right now in Denver, where last year he was out carried by Melvin Gordon on a per game basis. Melvin Gordon had more rushing yards on a per game basis. It was essentially a 50-50 split. When I'm projecting this upcoming season, it's still a committee. I'm still expecting this to maybe be 60-40 in favor of Javonte Williams, 65-35 in favor of Javonte Williams. So Melvin Gordon's presence is going to cap the overall median projection that you can have for Javonte. But if something were to occur to Melvin Gordon and Russell Wilson turns this into a top 5 offense in the NFL, all of a sudden, Javonte Williams could be a top 3 running back in fantasy. Obviously, the talent profile is there. Like, Thomas, please pull up the stat line that we have of Javonte Williams in the one game that we saw him starting without Melvin Gordon last year. Now, our next 2 guys, Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans. We've moved Mike Evans down because I do have those questions surrounding that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. On top of that, here with Mike Evans, it looks like Chris Godwin's probably going to be back to football sooner than a lot of people assumed. So that should negatively impact the target share for Mike Evans early on. At the same time, the addition of Julio Jones is going to make it where maybe, just maybe, Mike Evans is capped and he's not able to go over a 25% team target share, even if Chris Godwin were to miss time. So with the bolstered wide receiver depth in Tampa, with the additional news that we're getting about Chris Godwin potentially making his way back early, we do have to move Mike Evans down here. Deebo Samuel at 23. If you look at ADP is going to tell you to draft Deebo Samuel significantly before this. I'm just concerned because I think the 8 rushing touchdowns that we saw from Deebo Samuel last year, that is 100% going to regress regardless of if you had Trey Lance or not. And also with the transition from Jimmy Garoppolo to Lance, we know that Lance is going to be more of a vertical passer. And with those scrambling quarterbacks, they don't have to have as high of a dump off rate. They don't have to look at those options that are running closer to the line of scrimmage when the pocket's collapsing. I think that Lance actually skews the target share more in favor of guys like George Kittle, like Brandon Ayuk, compared to what we saw last year. I think the rushing touchdowns take a back seat. Maybe they fall down to 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns, which would still be fantastic for the wide receiver position. So I haven't been drafting a ton of Deebo Samuel. We would rank him here at the end of the second round though. But now let's move over to the third, and let's start it off Tyreek Hill here at 25. I mean, with Tyreek Hill, obviously getting a massive quarterback downgrade, and I'm also concerned. I think that Jalen Waddle is truly a special talent. If you look at how good Jalen Waddle's rookie season was, this is a wide receiver that I think if you're going to go through and you're going to fade him coming up into this season, you're probably going to be losing a decent amount of money. I think it's in the range of outcomes that Jalen Waddle ends up actually being the wide receiver one here over Tyreek Hill. I'm going to remember, Jalen Waddle has had that chemistry with Tua Tagovailoa for years now. Tyreek is just getting added into this situation. And now at 26, we are going to have James Conner. And if you look at ADP, it's actually pretty aggressive on Conner. But I think if we're looking at the receiving down role that he should have with the departure of Chase Edmonds going over to the Miami Dolphins, from a PPR standpoint, he is going to be significantly better in terms of his weekly floor this upcoming season. Now, yes, the touchdowns are going to regress 100%. He's not scoring as often as he did last year. I mean, if he was going to, we would rank him as a round one player, looking at the fact that his targets just go through the roof in games that Chase Edmonds doesn't play. Our next player in this tier going to be Keenan Allen at 27, full PPR format. Love getting Allen here as the wide receiver that we can assume is going to come close to 9-10 targets a game yet again, as he's done over the past 5 seasons. And on top of it, should be coming from a very efficient quarterback play with Justin Herbert. I think you have a very nice floor with Keenan Allen in particular. Obviously, if you transition over to a half PPR format, if you transition over to a non-PPR format, Keenan Allen's volume isn't going to be as valuable because he is going to be that lower average depth to target wide receiver that isn't going to be racking up as many yards on a per catch basis, or let's just say his touchdown rate is going to be a lot lower than league average as well. But now let's go over to our next player in this tier at the tight end position. I love me some Kyle Pitts. I mean, Kyle Pitts was a player that we were calling one of the worst values in fantasy last year. Like, I hated when people were drafting a rookie tight end at the 3-4 turn last season. That was until he put up one of the best tight end seasons, if not the best rookie tight end season of all time. If we're going to go through it, if you're going to look at his target share with what he had as a rookie, if you're going to look at just the players he compared to at 21 years old, only elite level rookie wide receivers were able to put up that same production that Kyle Pitts did on a per game basis. Only elite wide receivers. You're getting him at tight end. I know Mariota's trash. You don't have to tell me. I know I like Drake London as well, but there are a crap ton of targets available in this offense if we're looking at everybody leaving and the Calvin Ridley suspension. So I'm all in on overpaying for Kyle Pitts. But now going over to our next guy, we are going to have T. Higgins at 29. This is going to be lower than T. Higgins' ADP on Underdog. With Higgins, I'm completely fine making this bet in the Cincinnati Bengals direction when we're looking at this team as an offense that I've said this time and time again. I think they look to push the pace of play with the improved offensive line that they have this upcoming season. I think that you're going to look at a team that goes from maybe being a top 5 offensive pace of play from a game neutral environment to maybe trying to get to where the Kansas City Chiefs are, trying to get to where the Los Angeles Chargers, the Arizona Cardinals, or even maybe the Dallas Cowboys. Now, of course, it's very hard to make that projection from one massive shift one season to the next. But hell, Joe Burrow led the NFL in sacks allowed last year. I think it makes sense why they were such a slow-paced offense and limited the volume overall. Now let's go to our next player. It's going to be another Allen, but this time it's going to be Josh Allen here at 30. Here with Josh Allen, I think that this is going to be a quarterback that does project to be the quarterback 1 overall, and it's a very safe projection if you look at the fact that he's going to provide rushing upside. Like, it's literally like you take, say, Tom Brady as a passer, and you add on 300 rushing yards, and you add on 5 rushing touchdowns. That additional points per game there is massive in fantasy football. That's legitimately an extra 60 points just with what he's doing on the ground. If you look at what 60 points is, say through passing yards, well over 1,000 passing yards he's getting added on. I mean, in fantasy football, having those quarterbacks that can run the ball and also give you passing volume, it's legitimately a cheat code. But going to our last player in this tier, we are going to have A.J. Brown here. With A.J. Brown, I mean, in my opinion, probably one of the worst situations that you're going to find this upcoming season is playing alongside Davante Smith, playing alongside Dallas Goedert in a low-volume passing offense. But I've been on record saying this is the #1 offensive line in the NFL according to PFF. If we expect Jalen Hurts to take a step forward going into his second year starting, if we expect Davante Smith to take a step forward going into his second year in the NFL, I think that this is a sneaky team where Jalen Hurts could be the quarterback 1 overall. Still not going to be a great spot for A.J. Brown with the overall passing volume in this offense. He's going from one rush heavy run first team to another, but the difference is he has way more target competition on this one. I've always said this. I think A.J. Brown is one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. Like if we were just ranking based off talent here, A.J. Brown would probably slide into that tier that we had with guys like Davante Adams and CeeDee Lamb. The issue is going to be the situation. But now let's go down to our last tier we're going to be looking at. Let's go over to pick 32 with DJ Moore here. I mean, with DJ Moore, this is a wide receiver that if you're looking at a target share perspective at such a young age last season, he put up a historic performance, especially if we're looking at over the past 3 years where he's given you such a high floor with this overall target share. The issue has been the touchdown rate is non-existent, one of the worst touchdown rates in the NFL, but we know that's driven primarily based on quarterback play. And if we look at DJ Moore, hell, he suffered from legitimately the worst quarterback play in the NFL over the past 3 seasons. Sam Darnold was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year from an adjusted yards per pass attempt standpoint. His quarterbacks over his entire NFL career have averaged 6.05 adjusted yards per pass attempt. Baker Mayfield's usually sitting about 7. So trust me, I am not a Baker Mayfield fan in the slightest, but he is the best quarterback DJ Moore's ever played with. And it's painful to say that, but I do think DJ Moore is that elite level talent. I think the quarterback upgrade is going to really help him. Now, pick 33, Jalen Waddle. Now with Waddle, this is just a bet on talent. I think that he is also in a very bad situation. He's having to compete with Tyreek Hill for targets. Hell, Chase Edmonds can draw targets out of the backfield. Gesicki is a fine tight end as well. And I don't think Tua Tagovailoa is the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. I don't think Tua is some great passer. But if we are looking at Waddle, going back to what we were discussing earlier with how impressive his rookie season truly was, at the end of the day, it's a bet on talent. You can probably pass on him here. You can probably get him in the 4th round. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Mason, you're a clown for taking him here in the first place. But if we look at the trajectory that 99% of wide receivers take that had his rookie season, this is someone that should be going at the beginning of the 2nd round rather than the 3-4 turn. But of course, the Tyreek Hill trade is going to definitely make an impact on that. Now, pick 34, we are going to have Deontay Johnson. With Deontay Johnson here, I know we're being very aggressive with these wide receivers. These are my guys. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 7 last year on a points per game basis. If you look at how bad Ben Roethlisberger was from an adjusted yards per pass attempt standpoint, hell, like he was really only better than guys like Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, and Sam Darnold that were non-rookies. I would not be that surprised if the combination of Trubisky as well as Kenny Pickett is an upgraded combo compared to Ben Roethlisberger. Of course, not through their entire NFL careers, but we're specifically talking about 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. Deontay Johnson over 10 targets a game. I think that if George Pickens emerges, he takes that role from Chase Claypool, not necessarily from Deontay, who honestly is going to operate a lot closer to the line of scrimmage. Now, our next player, 35, Travis Etienne. With Travis Etienne here, I think that this is a running back that was a lot more exciting before we had the James Robinson news that James Robinson looks like he's going to be good to go this season. Very similar to Aaron Jones. I think we need to be monitoring what the red zone role is for these secondary running backs in these situations. Like maybe Travis Etienne's a player that we go sell low on if all of a sudden we get to week 1, week 2, week 3, and it looks like James Robinson does have the red zone role there in Jacksonville and he's going to be vulturing touchdowns. That would be detrimental, but if that's not the case and if instead James Robinson's playing the Jamal Williams role, I think that Travis Etienne can legitimately just be discount DeAndre Swift. Now, our last running back inside this top 36, our last player inside this top 36, I know is a bold call. It is what it is. Cam Akers. Now, in reality, you are not going to have to take Cam Akers this high. Everybody is off of Akers because, of course, he looked very bad at the end of last season. 6 months removed from the torn Achilles. Now he's 12 months removed. What I want to remember is I want to remember that Cam Akers going into last season, when he projected to be the bell cow running back 1 for one of the best offenses in the NFL, after he had that elite breakout to cap off his rookie season, after he came in as an elite level prospect, he was a round 1 pick in fantasy. So I'm ranking him here aggressively, knowing that if you're following these rankings, you're going to get Akers in almost every single draft. I mean, hell, on Underdog the other day in a live stream in a $250 draft where I ruined my team, I drafted Cam Akers at pick 60. Like, you can get Cam Akers way after this, but he is a player that I think I am fine putting a stamp on, fine targeting him, because if he can fully recover from that torn Achilles, similar to what we saw with Donta Foreman last year, then he's a young bell cow running back and one of the best offenses in the NFL. But that's all I got for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go down there, drop a like, leave a comment with any question you may have. I'm going to respond to the first 200. Subscribe to the channel if you want us to go a little bit deeper than this. But thank you again. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day.